I guess we're just not going to be able to see if anybody is actually seeing or not, but
we'll be able
we're
to
going to record
see
it and
or
go with
hear.
it.
Yeah, just have to share some clips to the
All
people,
right.
man.
Put that up there. Can you hear okay?
Oh yeah. No, I'm not hearing
No, you
anything.
can't? Okay. Let's back that up a second and find some professionals that are willing to work for free. Oh, there we go. It didn't auto do it that time. Now you should be able to hear it.
Prospect 626.
Yep, we're
Drug
good to
roll.
Some potential sites for an industrial project. This one did come through the Department of Commerce, and we were notified.
This is at
last
1.25
week
speed
before
if it
last
sounds like it's a
that
little
two of our
fast.
sites are still under consideration. They asked for some additional information, so we'll keep you posted on that one. And then the energy project, you guys all know, are continuing to move forward. Lone Bison was approved for their special use permit at the last county commission meeting. The one prior to that, Triple Oak, got approval for a couple of their special use permits. So
from everything I've seen, Lone Bison is just strictly renewable energy, solar panels, things like that. I don't see a data center attached to any of that. It all is just directly fed to the grid.
Things are continuing.
I was originally actually
in those areas.
Originally really interested in the Lone Bison project because it was a standalone solar project field, but we're going to get into it a little bit later in the emails with the Prairie Gateway project.
The Prairie Gateway project. We might be the first ones to make that known publicly.
Is a little scary, but go ahead.
All right.
And we'll have, we can have a little additional conversation on that when I move on to my second report, if you will. There may be some additional questions that come up on that. August is shaping up to be what it's looking like. It's going to be a very busy month. One thing I would make note of for you all, July 31st, next Friday, is Mike Muirhead's retirement celebration. Dang it. The city commission talked about not approving Mike Muirhead Day, thinking maybe that would stop him. But they ultimately didn't have the votes to suppress it. So his last day with the city will be next Friday, and they're doing a retirement reception for him at the Knights of Columbus Hall from 1 to 3. Come and go. So I hope that all of you will be able to make an appearance for that.
So what time is it?
1 to 3. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I will be out of town, but Dave plans to attend. And
good.
I think he has a crew going.
Mike has been a tremendous partner for economic development and really for all of the citizens of our community in his tenure here. So hopefully folks will be able to take part in that.
Should we do something?
Just real quick note, Vicki Gurman is a county commissioner and also on the board of Finney County Economic Development Board. And I don't know really how that works. Like, you're suggesting ideas to yourself and then voting on those ideas. But
right.
I don't know.
For that type of occasion?
Yes, we do. Yeah, as an office. And then upcoming events and meetings, items of note, as if you were unaware because you haven't gotten 1,000 postcards in your mailbox. Just a reminder, the primary elections are Tuesday, August 4th. Early voting has begun, so you can certainly.
Can't come soon enough.
We always think that, don't we?
And there'll just be another one.
Yeah. Right behind it, as it turns out. Yeah. And then last week, I had told you all at the last meeting that I'd been invited to participate in a panel discussion at what they called the Data Center Large Load and Comprehensive Utility Planning Summit in Topeka. And fortunately, that event was geared towards state legislators as well as city and county elected officials. Economic developers were there, and then a lot of folks from the energy industry were there as well. So it was a full day and a half of pretty intense panels, some really, really technical and others more adaptive in nature. Vicki was the only county commissioner who went to that, but it was a really impressive body of conversation
A lot of people.
that they had. Yes.
A lot more than I thought.
Yeah. They had space for 250 and it was full. So, yeah.
However, we did discover that it was pretty basic to us because we have prepared ourselves, we have looked ahead. And so, yeah, most of the things were like, oh yeah, we know that. Yeah, we're well beyond that. So,
Yeah. I don't know if your microphone.
So there's
Is
lots of
everybody's
things they
microphone?
know about data
Okay.
centers, but
So yeah, it was.
when we
it
ask
was
questions about
interesting
data
to see
centers,
that
they don't know
a
because
lot
they
of
don't
the
have a
folks
proposal
in
from
the
one.
room hadn't had conversations around the things that we've had conversations around. I think we just kind of assumed that other communities were having these conversations, and it was very obvious that they weren't. There's still a lot of lack of understanding of how these projects work and such. So I just kind of wanted to go through the talking points. The panel I served on was the county administrator from Sedgwick County. And
I'm trying to not interject every couple moments here, but did you see how she hesitated on how she wanted to word that? She thinks we're dumb about data centers, and we just don't understand how they work. So we are just laymen's.
and the attorney for the city
Mind you,
of
I'm not
Salina
claiming to be an expert
and
on data
myself.
centers, but
And
I can
our
look
panel
up
was
and
really
see the
geared
destruction
towards
that comes
how
from them.
to, it was titled like how to manage hyperpolarized conversations in these times. But it really was more about how to engage the community in the conversations, I think, more than anything, and how to manage the information that's getting out to communities. And so I didn't go through a presentation like I'm going to with you, but I had prepared the presentation that kind of covered the talking points that I anticipated making, if you will, during that presentation. And which I'm glad I did, because I've had several folks follow up and say, would you just send me some of your talking points? And which is great. So I just kind of wanted to go through that with you this morning and see if you all have any thoughts or questions or anything additional that you want to visit with about
Well, I have
this.
to say too, Lana, that I'm always so impressed. Of course, I'm impressed every time that you do a presentation. I think you do a fantastic job, but it's so cool to see how you are able to pivot and adjust to the audience who you're speaking to. You can gauge that and just pivot and go, I can tell I need to direct this maybe a little differently, because I knew you'd worked really hard on this presentation, and I was like, this is not exactly the presentation, but it was amazing. People were impressed. So you do a really good job.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind.
Were some of the communities further along in the process than we are, would you say?
There were some that are already considering data centers. They've already had data centers come to the table. But and we'll talk about that some during the presentation. I have to, the thing is that there's still so much that needs to happen for these projects. What we're working on really across the state right now. I mean, there's one under construction, right, in Kansas, but by and large, they're just now kind of getting through the energy piece of this. And if you all remember, we were really clear when we talked about this in January at the annual meeting and, trying to prepare the community for these conversations. There are a ton of things that have to happen before it ever gets to a land use conversation, right? So yeah.
The reason it's just now becoming a thing is because of SB 98, which will prevent them from paying, or will allow them to not pay sales tax at any level for all the material needed to build the data centers and the solar panels and all of that. And there's stipulations to that. That's why it's going to be renewable energy and whatnot. But there's that's a huge motivator as to why it has accelerated so fast starting this year and was just occasionally talked about before this year, even though there's emails in 2025, emails going back to 2023 from Triple Oak. It's just the conversation became very real starting in January because that's when the bill passed.
I think there are communities in different stages of conversations about this throughout the state. But I would say what we're learning, the more phone calls I get from folks across the state and from journalists and from legislators and from the folks in the administration, we're, as far as we can tell, the only community that addressed these processes, made them more difficult, more public-facing, more transparent before the conversations got started. So most communities are just looking at these through industrial zoning or through a conditional use permit that doesn't require as much interaction. And which is why Finney County is kind of being touted as the community to watch in these conversations. So the chair of the Senate Utilities Committee actually was one of the folks at the summit, and the legislators kind of formed a queue to get to talk to us about, we're following your process out there, and it's so impressive how you guys are doing this. So even he made the comment that
ramming it through
from listening to what you're doing, and we've been learning so much about these.
Doing what? What are we doing? Like we don't know anything about this. Remember? Isn't that what they always tell us when we ask about the data center?
Yeah. But, it's funny to me, like Vicky sitting there and just agreeing with everything that Lana has said. Like, it seems to me like Vicky is a yes person for Lana.
I can't say for sure, but their interactions seem to be beyond just co-workers. They seem to be friends.
There's a vested interest there. I'm questioning it. Go ahead.
Right.
By watching what's happening in Finney County. So I think as a community, we should feel really good about that we did have to work really hard to put this process in place, and we put it together pretty quickly.
They didn't start the process
yeah
to get ahead of it. The game here, they were approached by the game. The game said, we're coming to you. What are we going to do? And that's where they have started all of this. And we're going to find out more later on with the Prairie Gateway project. Go ahead.
So I'll go through, and if you have questions or want to talk about anything, we can certainly do that. So one of the things that we've been talking about, and I know you all have heard me say that, is this conversation isn't just about data centers or renewable energy or energy in general. It really isn't. I think that's the symptom, if you will, but I don't think that's really the cause of some of the divisiveness that we're seeing in communities, not only in Kansas, but really across the country. I think really what we have to be focused on is whether we can still have.
Did you have a comment?
Oh no, I'm curious to see what her explanation is, why everybody's so upset about, it's not just about data centers. She just said it's not about digital infrastructure or energy or.
I can't speak for everybody else, but if they were talking about building solar panels and windmills to power all of our homes and whatnot to lower our energy bills and reduce our carbon footprint in the area, you wouldn't hear word one from me.
Exactly.
Fact-based, transparent, constructive conversations, right, about growth and land use and infrastructure, water, energy, taxes, and the future economy. So I think we do a disservice to the constituency and to ourselves if we don't really view it through that lens. These are much larger conversations than just these project types. It's really indicative of how we have devolved or evolved, however you want to look at that, as communities. And so I think it's a great opportunity for us to really look at what can we be doing differently around communication, around conversations, and around engagement in this landscape. Again, we do believe that the economic opportunity is real related to these types of projects. It doesn't mean that every project is a good project.
It's real.
It doesn't mean every site is the right.
Yeah. The conversation right now is, how do we manipulate the public? How do we propagandize this so that they're not so angry? That's what I'm gathering so far.
Well, I mean, we know that from the previous core email request. There
Right.
was a coordinated campaign on how and what we're going to say and release to the public. And we're going to stand together as one commission or one board or body, and we're going to echo the same thing. And that's kind of where I have had issue with some of our commissioners is you don't have your own identity right now. You know,
Yeah,
your
no,
identity is being controlled by the corporate part of Finney County, you know?
and we'll see later in the emails, but yeah, that makes it very clear that she's the one that emails out the talking points to all of them. And every time that we do a video and the chatter picks up or whatever, that's what she says the chatter is picking up on social media. So remember, these are our talking points and we need to stick to them and be unified together with them. And yeah, it's very much a team effort on this at this point. You ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
Site, and it doesn't mean that we just should say, yeah, sure, come build it, we trust you, right? We should absolutely be reviewing and making sure we hold people accountable, making sure that we're getting the best local benefit we can and applying conditions to these types of projects. And we have to be honest that data centers, industrial energy systems, advanced manufacturing, artificial intelligence infrastructure, and some of these other large load users, these other manufacturers tied to these types of industries are going to be part of the next economic era. And you guys have heard us talk about that. This is the new information age, technology age, whatever you want to call it. This is today's industrial revolution. And as communities and as a state, we have to be viewing it that way. We can't stop the progress. We can't stop these things from happening. But how can we best make sure that if there's a benefit to be had from it, we capture the benefit. And if there are threats related to it, that we're preparing our communities for those threats as well.
Straight up admitted right there, this is coming and there's nothing we can do about it. Progress is the data center in her language. And there again, there's another email that I'll show you guys here in a little bit. It says this is inevitable.
Okay, but
Public input is essential.
Sorry.
is this also... You had released something on Facebook the other day that said there were like how many data centers already in the nation?
So we have more data centers in America than the next 14 countries combined. So that's one of the other talking points you'll hear from them is that we're in an arms race against China when it comes to artificial intelligence. But we have, again, 14 times more data centers than everybody else. That's just incomprehensible. I'd have to find that graphic on Facebook real quick. We can do that here in a minute. If we want to put it up on the screen. But yeah, there is not necessary. It's not needed. In fact, I'm questioning who's behind all of these data centers at this point. Why? What's the motivation? What is to be gained?
There's actually no honest number. I don't think there's an honest number, but it is more than 3,000 operational nationwide. There's over 4,000 total sites if you can include facilities under development. More than 1,500 are currently in the stage of planning or construction. So I'm assuming that would include ours and the 1,500 there, which is pretty crazy. There's already 3,000 operational data centers.
Yeah, we're not begging for more of these. And the communities that have these data centers aren't happy with them. Virginia is the data center capital, and they have a majority of them. I think like something like 30 or 40% of the data centers, and they've wrecked their state with them, and they're looking to do it here next.
It should inform decisions, but it can't replace analysis. So again, the duty is, this is tough to say, not to be popular in the moment. Our duty is to be responsible to the future. Why do they feel so political?
Release
Well,
those
because
analyses.
polarization grows when trust is low.
Say again.
They said they should release the analysis
Yeah, absolutely.
of everything. Why haven't we seen them? I mean, is she's clearly talking about doing that? Why haven't we seen it?
And right now in this environment, public meetings can pretty easily become about things that aren't actually being discussed in the room. And it's really important that as those who are engaged in those meetings, we continuously bring it back to what we're actually talking about and not let it get dragged away by the broader frustrations that are out there related to government, institutions, taxation, change, and distrust. So I put some larger notes in the bottom of these just as kind of catchphrases from these, but we can't rebuild trust by avoiding the difficult facts. We build trust by being consistent, transparent, and willing to explain the same things multiple times to different audiences in different ways. So again, the goal shouldn't be less public input, but it should be better public input. We shouldn't seek to limit who talks about it, but we should endeavor to make sure that it's useful by being clear about the process from the beginning. And I will tell you, we have endeavored to be very clear about this process from the very beginning. The problem is once people get emotional, once they fear starts driving their conversations, it gets harder and harder to be heard and to make sure that people are aware this is a process and we are nowhere near the finish line. To your point, Stuart, we are nowhere near the finish line on any of these projects. We are really at the very beginning of all of these conversations.
Yeah, we're at the beginning, but we can stop it and be a haven from these projects now. But we're going to be the leader, as she was saying earlier. Everybody's turning to Finney County to ask how to do it in their counties because of all the money it brings in. It's always about the money, and that's the only benefit. And when she says when people start getting in their feelings, when they start having emotions, and it's like people care about their environment and their well-being and their peace of mind and their little slice of heaven that they've worked so hard for being absolutely destroyed. Yeah, people tend to get a little emotional about that when you want to completely flip that upside down. But yeah, that's our fault.
I think the other thing you guys have heard us talk about, but we can't have honest conversations about growth opportunities in the state of Kansas or really, again, anywhere without having an honest conversation about taxation. We know people are frustrated with property taxes. We know that. But in Kansas, the way we have designed, and quite frankly in most states, they're designed where local governments have very limited tools to use to fund the services that we as a society have said we expect in an organized society, right? And to fund growth. It does cost money to grow, but I will tell you, as you have heard me say multiple times, it costs money to die too. And so we have to be mindful of the fact that folks want to know more about why they're being taxed. They want to know where that money is going. But we have a duty also to inform them that there are limited ways that we get the funds that we need to support our communities and to grow our communities. And in Kansas, agricultural land is a challenge for us as we seek to grow and sustain our communities. I know we've had a whole presentation on this, but I think it is worth reminding because, again, even when I talked about this a little bit at the summit, I was astounded by the number of people who came up and asked questions about, hold on a minute, talk to me again about ag valuation. There's just a lack of understanding about that. So in Kansas, we put it in our Constitution back in 1976. We passed a constitutional amendment. I don't know if they got as many postcards as you're getting about this one, but in 1976, we passed a constitutional amendment to protect agricultural producers. That's what it was for. It was to make sure that ag valuation, the taxes due on ag property, did not fluctuate or impact our farm economy in a negative way quickly. They wanted there to be a slow growth in the taxation related to ag property. and I think Sam would probably give us a whole history lesson, but we all know what was happening in the 1970s, right? We went through some huge economic challenges as a country. And so in 1976, we were having a lot of the same conversations that we're hearing today around ag production, global trade, energy prices, all of those things that are affecting us today. How many times have you heard me say, there's nothing new under the sun? There's nothing new under the sun, right? So in 1976, we passed a constitutional amendment that said we were going to protect ag values. In 1986 and 1992, we did some additional tweaking to that. But basically now, the way it's valued is an 8-year rolling average throughout top bottom. Kansas State University throws in whatever the modulator is going to be for that. And that's how the state of Kansas determines assessed valuation of agricultural land, okay? So it doesn't move the way market prices move for commercial or residential or industrial taxation. So it is not based on the market value of that land. I doubt if there's a farmer anywhere who would sell their land for what the county has it assessed for. Sam, would you sell any of your land for what the county has it valued at? No, you would not. The market price for land is far different than the tax value of land, okay? And why that matters is because so much of our state is valued as agriculturally assessed land, we can't rely on that land to pay for all the services of the people, the constituency, or to pay for growth. It certainly can't fund growth, right? So we have a few options. We either grow the tax base, we change the tax structure, we reduce services, or we shift the burden somewhere else. And to pretend there's a different option out there that we can just allow it to continue as it is not legitimate. It's no different than saying we either grow or we die. We either fund services or we die. That's pretty much where we are. So again, we have got to have these strategic conversations about converting limited acreage into more productive use that creates jobs, infrastructure investments, and a broader tax base. If we just don't have a choice.
Just real quick, remember what she said that is going to create jobs there. So we're going to circle back to that.
Agriculture alone cannot support schools, infrastructure, public safety, growth. We have to have industrial and commercial tax base. What we're seeing, a lot of the frustration we're seeing across Kansas is frustration from homeowners. It's from that residential base who's saying, why do my property taxes keep going up? Well, because that's where the burden is sitting in many, many communities right now, simply because we're not growing that commercial and industrial base fast enough to displace where that pain gets felt, if you will. In Finney County, nearly 90% of our acreage is agricultural use. And as we've talked about before, the taxes collected from agricultural property can't begin to cover the costs associated, right? Road and bridge, public safety. And we're talking about the sheriff's department budget even, right? So what ends up happening is residents in the cities, the city of Garden City, the city of Holcomb, end up carrying a larger share of the burden for all of the county simply because they've got that additional mill levy on them. And we're having to pay for a lot of the services that are being used in the unincorporated area of the county, but paid for by those of us who live in the incorporated areas of the community. And in Kansas, it's not that much different. When you look at the broader base, you're talking, depending on what metric you look at, but they estimate 85 to 90% of the land in Kansas is devoted to agriculture. So that is a lot of our land base that is taken up with agricultural use. And when we're talking about property taxes, we have to be talking about that. This is math, right? And one of the things I didn't talk about during the summit, but I want to be sure we talk about locally, is that at the same time that we're seeing all of these other changes in technology and in energy and all of these things that are moving what seems like very quickly in our society, we're also seeing changes in agriculture. And we all kind of have this mindset of agriculture being mom and pop, as Sam would describe it. We think of it as being the folks, that we grew up with. And we think of it in some kind of nostalgic terms, really, if we look at it that way. The truth is agriculture is a large, large industry. It is a business. When you go to look at the catalog for Kansas State University, it's agricultural business. Right? It's ag industry systems. This is a large industry, and we have to view it through that lens. This is a sophisticated industry. but it's also seeing changes. And so again, to pretend that we can just rely on agriculture as a state, and granted, agriculture is definitely our largest growth output right now. It is what a lot of our other value-added businesses are based on, but it's changing too. And the technology advancements are going to continue to impact how agriculture changes. So we're already seeing shifts in food systems. We're seeing more lab-grown proteins. And I would tell you, if you're paying attention to the news, you should be very nervous about what that could mean for our state's economy. Because I just read yesterday, it's at least 2028 before our cattle numbers can be expected to rebound back to what they need to be in order to support where the beef industry has grown to at this point, which means we're going to continue to have pricing pressures, right? Because
So let's just acknowledge for a moment there that she's saying that we're going to end up sacrificing our cattle industry because of 3D printed meat. And I have not met a single person in our area that has anything to do with farming or ranching that is okay with 3D printed meat and would ever be okay with it. You're talking to a guy that has a 3D printing business and is not okay with 3D printed meat as it currently is made anyway.
it's supply and demand. We all understand that. The other thing, though, that crunches in supply do is inspire innovation. And we're going to continue to see more and more focus on how can we do, quote, protein without growing a cow, for instance, or a chicken or a pig, whatever that may look like. So unfortunately, these types of crunches, if you will, in the market create more reason for scientists, for folks in laboratories to start innovating and creating different resources to provide that protein for the growing global population. And the global reliance that we have been able to experience in Kansas and in the US and certainly in Kansas, right? There's been a global reliance on the food we produce. We've never been able to consume everything that we produce in Kansas. And that was never the idea, right? Economic development is not selling a hamburger to your neighbor. It's selling a hamburger to somebody who lives 300 miles away. That's economic development. That's actual trade taking place, right? Well, as we see these innovations take place in food systems, we're going to see less and less reliance on American agriculture and, by extension, on Kansas agricultural products. The really concerning piece of that is that our geopolitical relations, so the relations we have with every other country on this planet, pretty much boil down to food and energy. Or as Sam would say, energy and energy, because food is energy. Food is energy for humans, right? And energy. Most of our geopolitical relationships, diplomatic relationships, our trade, is really boils down to food and energy. And as we see that.
So what we're looking at her talking about here is we're going to be trading our cattle industry for data center energy, and acknowledging that because Trump gave, $4 billion to Argentina for their cattle industry, is that we are going to eventually be buying beef from Argentina, not from Kansas. And she seems to be okay with that, since just the little I know about Lana Duvall, I know that she is a supporter of President Trump. When I was in the Finney County Economic Building, she was on a phone call with a person talking about the Republican debate. And so I know that she's ran in close circles with Chris Kobach. So she is very much on the Republican side and a supporter of Donald Trump. And a part of that administration has been destroying the cattle industry, from what I've seen.
Landscape change, that won't just affect us economically, that will affect our positioning in the global marketplace. So these are real concerns. And I don't mean to sound alarmist. I'm just saying we have to be viewing these conversations with an honest, open, transparent lens.
How has that 5,000 number changed over the last 10 years in Kansas?
It's gone down.
Why not?
I mean, there's been more and more consolidation, certainly.
I just wondered how much. Would you know that, Sam?
Yeah, it's certainly changed. But again, that's just more indication that it's an industry, right? And so no differently than, than retailers kind of sorting themselves out and that changing landscape, agriculture is the same thing. You end up with a lot of consolidation and a lot of corporate ownership of lands and farms. So in Finney County, you guys have heard this again a lot of times, but our philosophy has been that we will strategically convert limited numbers of acreage into higher, more productive use. And so from 2011 to 2025, our real property valuation, so this is the valuation we can impact, doesn't include public utilities, doesn't include oil and gas. We've grown that from 247 million roughly to 535 million. We've more than doubled the real property valuation in the county. And that matters, again, because if you look at those trends over time, that green line down there is the oil and gas valuation. Remember when we talked about that, oil and gas is valued based on production and a whole formula that they utilize for that. But we've gone from 2011, when we had roughly 117 million in oil and gas, to now only having 34 million in valuation for that. The state assessed utility, those are Sunflower Electric, the coal generation plant, right? So those are set on a straight depreciation. So as it ages, the value is going to continue to go down. So again, in 2011, we had 102 million in valuation there. We're down now to 67 million. So had we not grown that real property valuation, where would we be? Well, had we just continued on the same path that we had been on previously, we could have projected that our valuation would be somewhere around $322 million in real property valuation. Instead, because of our growth, it's at 535 million. So 213 million additional valuation has been created because of the economic development philosophy in Finney County since 2011. Spoiler alert, most Kansas communities have not experienced that, okay? So again, I think it's really important that we just recognize that there's a lot of conversations that we need to be having at the same time so that we have a premise that we can all agree this is where we are and this is where we need to get to. So do these industries have impacts? Yes, they do. Does every other industry have impacts? Yes, they do. To pretend otherwise is, again, silly. We have to start with the truth, and every industry has impacts. Agriculture has impacts, housing developments have impacts, commercial growth has impacts, every industry has impacts. The questions we should be asking are, can we measure those impacts? Can we mitigate any risks associated? Can we capture benefits? Can conditions be enforced? So if we put a rule there, is it a rule we can actually hold them accountable to? And ultimately, can the community be better off because we made these decisions? And again, I think it's really important to just say it can't be nostalgia versus technology. It just can't. That's how you...
What she didn't say there is it matters who those impacts impact, which communities, which areas. Do any of these people that are going to be voting for this live in an area that will be directly affected by having a data center in their backyard? My guess is no, but I haven't looked up all of their addresses, which would be public knowledge if anybody wanted to do that. But I'm doubting that any of them live in an area that will be anywhere near this data center.
That's how you end up in emotional conversations, and those will not benefit us long term. We can acknowledge the emotion tied to this. We can acknowledge the fear, the concerns around change, and all of those things. But we can't let that drive the conversations. We have to have a standard in mind of stewardship. We're not just trying to maintain status quo. We've got to take care of all of our resources, not only for today, but for those future generations that come after us. And I think it's also important to note here that most of the conversations we have when we sit down and talk to people individually, most of those, I think, come back to emotion. Would you agree with that, Vicki? And understandably so. Change is hard. And I think one of the things that we hear a lot is that these changes it's happening too fast. And then that's followed by the accusations that you guys have obviously been talking to these companies and keeping it a secret from us. Well, we haven't. We haven't. The truth is the energy
Finney County Commissioner Larry Jones has emails from Triple Oak from 2023. That's how far back they have talked to them. Details, I don't know. I can't say. I know there's one email that goes back to 2023. So that's as far back as I've been able to trace it.
Companies have, right? But we have not. We have not been involved in those conversations, not because we're not important to it, but because they weren't ready for us. There was no need for them to talk to us yet. They have so many steps to get through. And if you all remember at the annual meeting in January, which seems like a very long time ago now, but I talked specifically about what these companies have to look for first is energy. That is the most important thing. And they are, as I said at the time, pretty agnostic about where that energy comes from. But they have to have the energy first. Then they have to worry about the land. If they can't get the energy, it doesn't matter how much you would want them to be in your community, they can't locate there. They have to be able to do the energy. In Kansas, they have to be able to generate enough new electricity to cover their needs.
Why do they have the land?
That's why it seems like they're happy.
Why do they already have the land?
Yeah. Why are they already buying it up? Why are they voting to change the status of that land from agricultural to industrial? If all of this isn't already decided, why are they making votes about it?
Happening fast because they're happening all over the place, number one, and because they're happening in chunks. They're happening alongside this energy growth. And for that reason, I really believe that the energy partners should be in front of these conversations. They need to be in front of the public. We invited Sunflower Electric and Wieland to present to the county commission Monday, specifically to get in front of the public with that information. And I think they did a tremendous job of talking through what that process looks like, everything they're having to weigh. And people were absolutely shocked to hear some of that. We take it for granted that the public understands that this electric cooperative isn't just a group of fine folks who we all know and we all recognize, and they buy a pig at the county fair every year. These are sophisticated industries. These are multi-million-dollar industries, and they are publicly regulated, and they are held to standards, and they are required to provide energy to industries that come knocking. They're required to do that. Jim McVeigh made it very, very clear. If we don't find a way to serve those loads, we lose our protection to be the provider. So I think people are shocked when they hear that, because they just assume that everybody has free choice. We don't have to do these projects. Well, that's not the case. FERC and the RTOs absolutely have an expectation that you are going to serve these projects. So again, they really need to be at the front of these conversations. They need to be telling those stories to their members and to the communities at large. And I would tell you, a lot of the elected officials in the local governments also don't understand that's how these energy companies are driven. So it's not about shifting blame or anything else. It's just about making sure that people know who can they address their concerns to. And in this case, yes, the energy companies have known about these large load users way longer than the local communities have. Not because they were keeping secrets, but because if they weren't able to figure out the loads, there was no reason to get the local community involved. So again, accountability has to be directed to the right place. So locally, yes, land use issues we have to work on, right? But when it comes to actually most of the other concerns we hear, there are other people that the local government has to rely on to do their part, right? They have to rely on the energy partners, the state agencies, the federal agencies, the electric cooperatives, the regional transmission, Southwest Power Pool, environmental regulators, and the developers. There's a lot of other places along this line. And again, Stuart, to your question of are people in a different place and different, further along with these projects? Yes, they are. But in the end, none of these projects can happen without all of these players checking the boxes that they've done their part. So again, the public needs to know who they should be directing their questions and their concerns to. So an accountability map, we've talked about this a lot, but it really is. What does local...
Mind you, that's what she says, that we need to redirect who the IR needs to be going towards. But when they're emailing each other, they're tagging Brian Ruda at the college. They're tagging the mayor of Holcomb. They're tagging everybody in these emails. So everybody is involved with it, but the buck gets moved in in a circular motion.
Government control. What is the developer, the electric provider, the state, federal government? It's important that everybody understands, and as I said in the panel that day, everybody needs to get in their lane and then remind yourself what your lane is and stay in your lane. You can question whether artificial intelligence should even exist, but you can't control it. So if you're a county commissioner or a city commissioner, make sure you're focused on the things you can impact. You're not going to stop this industrial era. We will not stop it. It is a matter of, do we participate in it? And if we do participate, how do we participate? And in some instances,
that is Lana Duvall directing the Finney County Economic Development Committee board to, she's giving them their marching orders. They need to stay in their lane. It doesn't matter how bad AI is. It doesn't matter if it's going to be used to spy on you, if it's going to be used to spy on our citizens. It doesn't matter. Our job is to make sure we facilitate it to happen. And your opinions about what AI does do not matter, is what she's telling them.
it's not even about do we participate. It is about you will be a participant, whether you're an engaged participant or a bystander who takes on whatever happens, you're going to be impacted by it one way or the other. The other thing that we're seeing more and more conversation around is that the public wants to vote on these types of projects. We've talked about that in this room, right? We want the public involved in the conversations, but it would be the most dangerous thing in our communities to think that we should just go to the public and have them vote on whether or not they like these types of projects. Number one, what we know is that won't necessarily stop them, right?
It would be the most dangerous thing for you, the people, to be given a choice, for your voice to be heard as a collective group. It would be the most dangerous thing to our community, she says, for your voice to have a matter.
And if you did vote, doesn't mean anything, because again, you've got energy providers who the federal government says you will find a way to serve these. You will give them an opportunity to be served. So again, the public needs to understand that there are other ways to express their voices instead of we should vote on each project. We need to give them the opportunities to participate in the process, but it's not going to be in a strict, we're going to go to the polls and say, yes, we like this one, or no, we don't like this one, right? And for obvious reasons, you would have inconsistent standards. Obviously, there are private property rights involved in that, right? Are we going to go to landowners and say, good news, we're going to go ask everybody else how your land should get used? And I don't think anybody really wants that to happen, right? And from our perspective,
I'm sorry, last I checked, you have to go to this board and ask if you can build a patio on your part, not this specific board, but if you want to make changes to your property, you have to go get permission to do so. Am I wrong on that?
No. You have to have a permit for it. But nonetheless, it's not, hey, do we want to vote on every specific project? It's, hey, do we want to allow our county to give permits to build digital infrastructure campuses?
And it's not like we're
our
saying,
shared resources. You may privately own the land, but we share the air, we share the water, we share all of it.
Right. These are decisions that will affect all of us.
If you want to put solar field in to allow the Southwest pooling system to supply a data center power out in Virginia where they have tons of fresh water to use at no loss to anybody, then fine. So be it. What's the benefit it's going to give our community? We're going to have less. Is our power going to go down because, we have, instead of fields of sunflowers and wildlife, we have fields of solar panels? I think there should still be a trade-off for us there somewhere, but I don't necessarily know if people are, for her argument that, it's happening. Yeah, it's happening. There's over 3,000 of these things already in the freaking country. We don't have to have one here. They can be built elsewhere.
she's not, it's not like somebody's just trying to open a shoe store downtown and asking for permission of it. That's not, we're not demanding involvement like this. This is going to reshape the landscape just like Tyson did, but on a much, much bigger scale. And the result of it is going to be less than 700 jobs. So Tyson has 2,000 to 3,000 jobs, I believe. And then, you know, all the satellite jobs it created from that, from farmers that grow the corn that feed the cattle, to the truckers that drive the cattle, to the meat processors. I mean, there's tons of trickle jobs that happen from that, but we're talking about 700 jobs for a massive project. Yeah, they'll brag about the 4,000 jobs to construct the thing, but that's temporary. That's not a permanent deal.
If we can clearly say it would be a very slippery slope for every industry. I remind you again of what happened when Sunflower Electric was pursuing an expansion of the coal generation facility. Had that gone to a local public vote, probably they would have gotten the support. People in Finney County were excited about that project. We saw the need for that project. We were convinced it was a great idea. Outside influences ended up stopping that project. If you think that can't happen to every single industry that exists across this state, you are pretending and you are fooling yourself. Because let me tell you, if the next target is feedlots or dairies or production agriculture or oil and gas exploration or coal generation, you name the industry.
For those who don't know, what she's talking about is it was the late 90s, early 2000s that they were talking about building a clean coal plant out here for Sunflower Electric, and it was basically stopped by Governor Kathleen Sebelius at the time because there was a big movement for the green energy process to be had, and so they didn't let us make any changes. But we were going ahead with that project. Like she said, if we would have been able to vote on it ourselves, we would have been able to do that. But an outside force forced it, and we were going ahead with it until an outside force forced us to stop. So we could absolutely say no to this project and the exact opposite, say we're not doing that. And then if an outside force comes in and forces us to have this project, that's a completely different deal. We have to fight a completely different entity at that point. We're fighting federal government at that point, not the CEO of Finney County Economic Development, who is bringing this project and developing it and ushering it and then forcing all of us to go along with it, whether we like it or not, because it was her project that she's been working on and she thinks it's a good thing.
If enough people decide they don't like that industry, that'll be the next item on the ballot. Are we prepared for that? I don't think so. So again, public input, yes, it is absolutely it is a necessary piece of a democratic society. We should want the public engaged. But for elected officials to abdicate their judgment, to say, all right, just let them decide it then, that is not democratic. We elect our representation to make.
What? Like, she does not want the board members to vote in the favor of the people and what the majority of those people want? Does that make sense to you? I don't.
No. That you're elected to do the will of the people, what they want you to do. You're the single voice for the collective agreements or disagreements of your community or your constituents. You should always do it. That's how you get voted out, Lana, is when you don't do what the people want you to do. You know, like, come on.
And mind you, these board members are appointed by city commission or by county commissioners, but one of which is Vicki Gerben. So I don't know how she got appointed here when she is actually another fight.
She's
for another
Lana's
day.
lapdog, apparently, and I'm sorry to say that.
It really feels like that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Hard decisions, but to make informed decisions.
But how many times have we heard
Nodding along.
we should be voting on this.
Yeah, yeah, agreed. And again, that's why we have to continuously remind folks, right? That just know that is a dangerous, dangerous slope to get on, okay? So, and again, I really do believe
Unreal.
communities that have a process, a good
Just it's a dangerous slope. Again, to reiterate, she believes it is dangerous for people to have a voice in their community.
good process in place
Sorry, I cut you
I'm
off
just
there.
I'm just blown away. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
are going to be better positioned into the future. We keep saying this, and I think we have to keep saying it, and I know it sounds alarmist to some folks, but I think it's just honest. We should not assume that local control will remain exactly as it is today. We already see a lot of federal attention on accelerating the data centers, the energy, the artificial intelligence infrastructure. We know the pressures are there. I know how tempting it can be to say, we'll just put a ban or a moratorium in place and we can breathe easy. I don't think we should convince ourselves of that, because I think there is.
Why does she get a vote? She said, I don't think we should convince ourselves of that. Why does she get a vote and get to be the sole one to have a vote? That doesn't make sense. I think there should be a moratorium on them for 365 days until we can figure things out with these data centers
And they
how
have an
they're affecting
actual plan.
communities. And exactly. And then in that time frame, we can put it to a community vote, and we can decide, do we want to? Because she's not wrong when she says it'll be a massive economic boom to our area. Yeah, it will be. There'll be a lot of businesses that come our way, and in 20 years, whether that data center stays there or not, the jobs will deplete by at least 4,000, because that's how many construction workers will suddenly not have a job anymore.
Yeah.
There's a very likely a chance, if you have energy infrastructure and available land in your county, there is a very good chance that these projects are going to land in your county regardless of what rules and bans and stoppages you might have in place. So even if we don't ever approve a project,
They're just going to break the law.
you're in a better.
Yeah. Well, and
They're just going to break the law.
The big
Do it
threat
anyway.
is that they're going to come in with eminent domain and force us to build data centers. What if the federal government shows up? What if? Okay, fine. That's a different day and a different fight. That doesn't mean we lay down before they even show up.
Position to have processes and an idea of what would make a project like this beneficial for our community if we had to make one comfortable here, if you will. And, you know, again, our responsibility as public servants, which we all are, our elected officials are, we do owe the public respectful listening and clear explanations and a correction.
It's so contradictory.
Because
Right. We need to listen to them. We just don't need to listen to them.
2 minutes ago, it was fuck them.
Right.
Yeah. You know. But
of talking down or, you know, being condescending when we correct a false premise, but we're not doing anybody any favors if we don't correct it, right? If you say, well, the sky is absolutely green and nobody corrects that, then what good are you doing somebody, right? So
Data centers absolutely wreck communities and destroy water systems and destroy wildlife systems and are a threat to native wildlife. That's an empirical fact. But
prove him wrong, Lana. Put it out there. Prove him wrong. Correct.
What is
narrative.
the opposite of that? What is the? Because whenever you bring up these things like the water filtration system, well, we haven't had a bid from an actual data center yet, so we don't know what kind of water filtration system they would actually be using, and we can't stop that from keeping us from moving forward. It's ridiculous. It's not answering the hard questions while ushering in the money because they see the money.
I feel like there's an ego.
you have to talk.
I'm sorry.
There's an ego. I don't know Lana Duvall. I know of her. I've heard of her. You know, other people's opinions of her, but it's hard not to sit here and watch this video. And this is my first time going through this video fully. And the other little tidbits that I've seen of her, she has an ego. And that ego is she is in charge. She is Finney County. You know, she's responsible for all of its growth, all of its successes. You know, we're going to do things her way or it's the highway. And I feel like you can't sit here and not watch that and feel like she's the queen of the sandbox, man.
And
she's
it
Sid from
can't
Toy
be
Story.
argued that she has brought a lot of good businesses to our area and has
Sure.
done a good job. I mean, nobody can take that from
She's
her.
done things.
But
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
that doesn't mean that she has the ultimate say so on all of it.
Right.
You know, if
Yeah,
she
and I feel like
if
she
she
feels
brings
like
this
she
one to the
does.
table and all the commissioners say, hey, we've been hearing from everybody that they don't want this to happen, we're going to vote no. She shouldn't be the one to say, no, it's our job to convince them otherwise. That's not what her job is. That's taking it to another
Exactly.
standpoint. Like you said, like she thinks she's queen.
Mm-hmm.
About the honest trade-off analysis. Yes, are we giving up some agricultural production? We are. How will that actually impact us going forward? We need to be able to talk through that. We owe them courageous decision making.
We're not going to talk about that. We need to be able to talk through that. We're not going to talk about the agricultural aspect of it, but we need to be able to talk through that.
So again, just because there's loud voices or it's uncomfortable doesn't mean that we should abdicate judgment. We still have to apply science and math, and we owe them stewardship of the future. So the takeaways I really wanted folks to understand in the room last week was that while data centers or energy projects may be the topic today, I don't think they're really the final test. We have to have honest, complete conversations around opportunity, growth, and property taxes. The real test will be whether we can still govern responsibly when the room is loud, when the facts are complicated, which they absolutely are with these projects, and when the politics are uncomfortable. If we want productive public input, public servants and community members, we're all in this together, must rebuild the conditions that make that possible. I believe that's honest communication, trust, transparency, facts, accountability, and courage. And I think it's worth noting here. Probably all of you have heard this quote before, but as Kansas goes, so goes the nation. You guys remember hearing that? So Eisenhower gets kind of that quote gets attributed to him often. It was actually William Allen White who first started utilizing that phrase, and it was carried forward by President Eisenhower. The idea of that was that Kansas, as small as our population is, and has always been, we've never been a big state, right, population-wise. We have always been balanced, honest, and driven by common sense. So when presented with change or opportunity, Kansas has always been a state, the people in this state have always been open to hearing the facts related to whatever those issues were, and how we responded as a state often was the bellwether for how the full nation would react to those issues and those changes. So the social, the progressive, the conservative trends that we would see often were indicated in Kansas first because we'd already had an honest, legitimate conversation around those issues. And I think we have to get back to the place where we serve as that bellwether again. And I think we can, but it's going to be hard work. And as electeds and as public servants.
But who says that bellwether is selling our soul to data centers, being the home of the data center? I don't understand that.
We have to recognize our role in that. And as community members, we have to recognize our role in that and take part in these conversations. So those were my takeaways. Again, they were really good conversations. I've had a lot of folks follow up. We had several people talk to us before we got out of Topeka and had several calls and emails since asking for just guidance and thoughts on processes in other communities. So again, Finney County, as hard as it feels like it's been to have these conversations here, we should be very proud of the fact that we're having these conversations and that we're having them in the public forum, even if they're uncomfortable. So happy to answer any questions you have.
I don't have questions. I have several comments that I would like to make if you guys don't mind. I'd like for Lance especially to remember today's date, July 22nd, 2026, and think about that 2 years from now and 5 years from now. Because I know you've talked about what Lana was saying, at those times, what we were hearing from our staff those many years ago, and how we've seen them coming to fruition. So I think we all should probably pay attention to that as well. A couple of things that came to my mind as we talked about emotion versus making wise decisions or considering, what to do. Two things that we've seen locally that I think demonstrate that picture very well. And the first one is the Windsor Hotel. And there are those who are emotionally attached to the Windsor Hotel and want that to remain a part of Garden City history, throughout eternity, I think. What we have seen is that there's no fiscal way to make that happen, but we see it sitting and further deteriorating because of emotion. The other thing that we've seen in this community is the big pool. And we saw it deteriorating and costing significant amounts of money to the taxpayers. And we watched as the city of Garden City spent a lot of time and a lot of effort talking to the people of the community and getting their input and ultimately making the wisest decision that they could make for that property that ends up, I don't know how profitable it is, but at least it's not draining the economy along with the water. So I think those are in mind. Also to understand that as civic leaders, and especially as elected officials, we need to remember, and I heard this from a constituent yesterday who actually was on a pretty significant board for 20 some years. And he told me that, people would ask what his opinion was. And he said, I don't have one. And they said, what do you mean you don't have one? And he said, it's not about what my opinion is. It's about what my constituents want and what the facts are. And
Really? It's
Yeah.
about what your constituents want and what the facts are. Is that the case?
But we shouldn't let you vote. You shouldn't vote.
Also, on those comments about the Windsor Hotel, that just goes to show right then and there, they do not care about you if you're downtown. If you have businesses downtown, they're not going to help you in any way, shape, or form. They want to see all of that get mowed down. They don't want to put any effort towards that at all. And then, I mean, just look at it. That's been clear. The State Theater, they just voted to sell it off, I think. And the Windsor Hotel, I mean, Cecil Albright was a billionaire. Like, he put money all over this community. How come they never hit up Cecil to get the Windsor fixed up and revitalize our downtown and start bringing businesses back downtown? That's not new and shiny, and there's no statues to be built for that kind of effort, apparently. Anyway, Vicky's that's just crazy comments.
I was like, that was so profound and so well spoken for somebody who's never served in public office. But we have to remember that that's what we need to do as public servants. It's not about whether we think data centers are good, bad, or otherwise, whether we think the Windsor Hotel is good, bad, or otherwise, and whether we think that the big pool was something worth saving emotionally. We cannot let our emotions get in the way of the facts. And as Lana always says, the math and the science. Another thing to
It's just the opposite
remember
of what they do.
is, when we hear people saying, you need to let us vote, you need to let the people vote, the people need to have a vote. Well, should the people vote whether we should get Olive Garden or, some other Italian restaurant? Or should the people be allowed to vote whether
No.
this car wash gets to come in and locate on this street corner?
No, but we get to vote on the regulations and things that you guys as a board enact while you serve on these boards and these commissions and things. And when you overstep and overreach what a city government should do, that, maybe prevents Olive Garden from coming here because maybe they can't use their own in-house contractor who they've trained to set their stores up the way they want them built so they can go in and do. And you prevent that from happening and those businesses won't come here. For that, we can vote you out and vote somebody in that's going to rewrite the law and allow those businesses to come here. That's how it works, guys.
And the day that Olive Garden is contaminating water supplies with olive oil or whatever, let's have that conversation about whether we should be
Absolutely.
bringing Olive Gardens in or whatever. But it's a
Yeah.
restaurant. We have other restaurants. You're comparing apples to spaceships.
Should know the people have elected the people to make those decisions. And yes, we want to hear your voices. We want to know your questions and your concerns. But this country is not a democracy where everybody
It's a republic.
votes on
Oh my
every
God.
issue. We are
That is the number one Republican talking point. We don't live in a democracy. We live in a republic. We live in a democratic republic. It's a combination of the two. You just love to ignore the democracy part. Sorry.
When it's in your favor. When
That's
it's in
another
your
rant for another day. When it's in your favor, yeah, you believe in the republic part.
Yeah.
a republic, and we say that when we recite the Pledge of Allegiance. We are a republic. That means that the people did get to vote. Everybody who's of legal age, a legal citizen, and lives in a particular community has the opportunity to vote on who their leaders are, and those leaders are tasked with making those difficult decisions for the betterment of the people they serve. So that's my little speech.
Very
Sounds
true.
like you're running for office.
I know, right? I'm not even.
Thank you. Yeah. Any questions or any other thoughts before we move on?
I thought the presentation from Wheatland and Sunflower was very informative.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to hear them talk about how much research and study they have to do before they even say, we will actually look at this project and how much it will cost, and how they make the developers pay even to do the studies. I mean, they're not making their customers pay for it. The developer has to pay for that. They're investing millions of dollars and they might not even get the project.
Absolutely. And I thank you for restating that again. A lot of these projects will not get built. A lot of the projects we hear about going on all across the country right now, many of those likely will not get built, right?
Okay, I don't think it gets any better from there. But before we end tonight, I want to show some highlights from the emails, if we can. The city emails. I finally got my city emails, and they were kind enough to give me my attachments, which I am still waiting on from the county, and I will not let that go, Dory. I will be calling you on Tuesday. Okay, so this was in the emails. This is from Nick Hernandez over in Dodge, talking about how data centers
Just
are.
with that full screen, Zach.
Oh, well, I
Make it
can't
big.
make it. I can't make it bigger because it's just on the webpage from the email.
Okay.
But we can do this. Get a little bit more in there,
There you go.
and maybe I can zoom. I don't know.
You're all
I feel
right.
like a boomer.
It's readable for you.
Anyway.
It's good.
It's from Nick Hernandez of Dodge City, and it's talking about how these data centers will bring in a lot of industry, but they're not good because of the sales tax, SB 98. And Matt Allen responded to that email and said, "We agree that this is very real and imminent for Southwest Kansas. We would also say that the bill shouldn't be limited to pilots. That's a program to help kind of dance around taxes and tax abatements. Local contributions agreements provide more flexibility and customization." So I included that because it just goes to show that Matt Allen believes this is imminent, even though the other emails he sent to his constituents kind of absolves him from having any kind of an opinion on it. In the emails, it also shows that it is a short-term surge of 4,000 workers and a long-term stability of 700. Now, mind you, that 700 doesn't have to be jobs housed here in Finney County, because data centers can be managed remotely. So a portion of those jobs could very much not be located in Kansas. This is the implementation timeline. Right now, we're in the 0 to 2 year phase, including approvals and site development, which is probably what they're working on the most. Next thing we're going to see is the housing expansion, the child care, and but it's a 20-year program that they're working on. let's look at that. The Prairie Gateway Initiative is what they call it, and it's more than just the data center. They're looking at becoming the hub, the next Wichita, Kansas City sized area. Um, Gateway includes the economic and data basin, which is the data center part of it, the innovation hub, the workforce that is going to be. So we're talking like architect firms and road, KDOT, and things like that. Research campus. This is Ryan Ruda is tagged in a lot of the emails, so they're very much planning to use Garden City Community College to train the workforce for this. And the corridor, that's the big infrastructure part, the roads and all, the highways that are going to be redone for this. But they're also looking at Commons, a bunch of retail customers coming out this way, including Olive Garden, which everybody's on Olive Garden. But also, what they don't talk about is all the mom and pop shops that this would destroy. I think Garden City's always kind of prided itself on its local businesses. I'm trying to find the map. That's my Google map on it. What did I do with my... There it is. So I know that's kind of hard for everybody to see, but if I overlay this with Google Maps, it's not going to let me do it, is it? Shrink that. There we go. So we're looking at, this is how much space the data center is going to take up. This is Deerfield. So you're looking at that extending all the way to Deerfield from Holcomb. But it doesn't even stop there. We're looking at option 1 and option 2 for the highway that they're going to build, because we got to put those 4,000 workers somewhere. And so they're talking about that being a housing development northeast of Walmart in this area, also taking up all of this. So, I mean, it's massive. This is all being decided for us, and it is life-changing for all of us. And we don't know the long-term effects of it, with contaminating soil, contaminating waterways, contaminating air, the amount of heat that these things put off. We just had a 110-degree day yesterday. I was at Deerfield Summer Celebration, and oh my goodness, that heat was real. It was a whole other animal. But yeah, as these things are cooling the data centers, they expel that heat back out into the environment and create heat bubbles. And you saw how big that's going to be. It's going to take up all of this space. So I don't know. That's huge. And granted, a lot of this is solar panels and the wind and natural gas and all of that's going to power this thing. But the data center itself will create heat spikes. That's just a part of them. And every summer it gets hotter for us. Kent, we've been on for a while, man. You got anything else you want to go over before we call it?
Not entirely. I think that, I don't know. I think there's a lot of questions around the Prairie Gateway presentation. That energy and database, and with hyperscale data centers, I think, the thing that they're not talking about is how many data centers too. In those emails, it was referred to as DIC number 1 several times. And so typically when you see that, there's more than one being discussed. And
even if there's not, if we're able to allow one in, they can allow as many as they want. It's that easy.
Yeah. And, with this concept being pursued that's in this, the living quarters and the new highways and, the 300 room hotel water usage on one of these data centers, this thing is its own freaking community.
And,
You know,
and what
do
is
we
it
really-
for?
Yeah.
You know, it's for spying on us, for advertising to us, because it's not like it's for creating the AI images or AI movies or anything, which all things I'm not really all for anyway. But those data centers already exist and are already able to make those things. But the flock cameras, you know,
You know, I don't think anybody out here is against economic development, you know, but I think the transparency should go hand in hand with it. This thing has been discussed since 2023 and several times over. On it, you know. So today's goal really isn't to convince anybody to agree with us. It's to ask good questions, examine public records, you
Oh, they
know,
just put
have
up 4 new
honest
ones.
discussion about the project. And what's this? Oh, more flock cameras. Yeah.
yeah, there's more on there than last time I checked. But yeah, we don't have very many of them here right now for us. But let's look at Wichita and Eastern Kansas, which already has data centers everywhere. What is that? That's Kansas City. That's Tulsa, so that must be Wichita there. Yeah. Look, they're everywhere. They got them everywhere.
Dodge is pretty. Look at Dodge compared
And
to Gold.
Dodge already has some data centers too. But Dodge has a lot more than Garden does.
Mm-hmm.
Why is there 3 on that one corner? What's going on here? What is it looking at? Why is it at the farmer's market? Why is it pointed directly at the farmer's market? That one's pointed right at the vocational school. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not to feed us, that's for sure. But I appreciate everybody who tuned in and watched. I appreciate you joining me, Kent, so I could have somebody to rant at instead of just into the ethos. And
Tried to help a little bit, you know, but I'm not much for conversation these days. It's hard to put your opinion out there and not upset somebody. You know, somebody, I think it was you, said you're not going to please everybody, you know.
yeah,
And good leaders don't. And I think that's something that I would like to see more out of our leaders currently, are them asking harder questions publicly.
absolutely.
And you know, moving away from this group statement and having an identity on what they think and what they feel, you know, and you know what their constituents are actually telling them to say. So, you know, we have a petition out there, you know, you can sign it and
Yep.
it probably get overlooked and thrown out anyway, is probably what's going to happen, but we'd like for you to sign it. That's a good place to start. And if you scroll down past that signature too, you can email all of their emails are there, your county commissioners, the decision makers. And we would like you to email and let them know, and type out a personal message, even if it's just no data centers, or, you know, please consider more
moratorium.
moratorium, or, you know, all right, ban, or whatever you want to say. Just say it. They're not going to read it. They're going to send it to Derek Ramos. Let Derek Ramos make a comment on it back to them if he wants to. Maybe call you a foreigner and not be able to prove it, you know,
Which he still hasn't addressed.
Or say why it's a foreigner, or what about it is actually about how they prove any of that. That's kind of, you know, they're just disregarding things. And I think that's the biggest point to all of that. That actually got me unfriended by a commissioner. Should I say his name? Kevin Basque unfriended me on
really?
Facebook and won't respond to my messages now. Which, you know, I've known Kevin my whole life. He lived in Garden City, grew up just down the street from where he lived, grew up with his kids. So I've always been
He always
supportive of
loves going
Kevin.
at me in the comments.
Yeah.
But,
Who
all right.
knows? But
You guys have a good night. I appreciate you.
we'll see you on the next one.